A 12-year-old boy named Misha went to spend his summer vacation for the first time with his grandmother in the small village of Belye Ozera. The village was far from the city, surrounded by dense forests and quiet lakes. His grandmother's house was old, wooden, with a deep porch and tall windows that faced the forest. His grandmother greeted Misha with a warm smile, but the boy immediately felt that there was something strange about this place. At night, lying in the old creaky bed, he heard rustling and quiet footsteps outside the window. The wooden floorboards creaked as if someone invisible was walking around the house. The next day, walking around the village, Misha noticed that the locals looked at him with suspicion and even fear. An old man, sitting on a porch, suddenly grabbed his hand and whispered, "Leave this place, boy. Nothing good awaits you here." Misha broke free and ran home to his grandmother, but the strange feeling of anxiety didn't leave him. In the evening, when his grandmother sent him to the cellar for milk, he heard a quiet sob coming from the corner. Approaching closer, he saw an old doll lying on the floor. The doll was in an old-fashioned dress and had faded hair, but the scariest part was that it had living eyes. Misha froze in fear as the doll suddenly lifted its head and spoke. "Help me." Misha dropped the milk jug and ran out of the cellar, slamming the door behind him. His grandmother, hearing the noise, came out of the kitchen and asked what had happened, but Misha couldn't say a word. He just stood there, trembling. At night, he was awakened by the creak of floorboards. He sat up in bed and saw the door slowly opening. The doll stood in the doorway. It walked toward him, leaving wet footprints, as if it had just come out of the water. Misha wanted to scream, but his voice was stuck in his throat. "Come with me," whispered the doll. In terror, Misha jumped out of bed and ran to his grandmother. He knew she must know something about what was happening. Finding her in her bedroom, he tearfully told her about his visions. His grandmother sighed heavily and, hugging her grandson, said, "It all started many years ago when your mother was still a little girl. There was a girl named Liza living in our house. She was an orphan, and I took her in. One day, Liza went to the lake and never came back. We searched for her all night but only found the doll. Since then, the doll started appearing and whispering for help. No one could understand what happened to Liza, but everyone knew her spirit remained in that doll." The next morning, Misha decided to uncover the mystery, no matter what. He returned to the lake and began examining the shore. Suddenly, he noticed an old, half-destroyed boat hidden in the bushes. Inside the boat, he found Liza's diary. The pages were filled with a child's handwriting, full of fear and pain. "I didn't want to go, but something pulled me into the water," wrote the diary. "It was terrifying. I couldn't scream, because the water filled my mouth. I tried to fight, but something dark and cold wouldn't let me go." Misha felt his heart freeze. He realized that Liza's spirit couldn't rest in peace and sought justice. But what dark force had pulled her into the water? Suddenly, from the depths of the forest, he heard a rustling sound. Misha turned and saw a figure standing on the lake's shore. It wasn't Liza or the doll. It was something else, dark and sinister. The figure stepped towards him, and Misha felt a coldness penetrate every cell of his body. Suddenly, his hand touched the cross on his neck, a gift from his grandmother. Remembering her words, he clenched the cross and, gathering all his willpower, shouted, "Go away. Leave us alone." The figure stopped and slowly dissolved into the air. Misha fell to his knees, realizing he had just escaped mortal danger. At that moment, he understood that he had to free Liza's spirit. Misha returned to his grandmother, and together they decided to perform a ritual that could calm the spirit. They went back to the lake with the doll and the diary. His grandmother lit candles and began to recite ancient spells. Misha held the doll and repeated after his grandmother. Suddenly, the lake began to boil, and the water started to rise. Misha gripped the doll tighter and felt it heating up. He heard Liza's whisper, "Thank you." The water suddenly calmed, and the doll fell from Misha's hands, becoming just an ordinary toy. Liza's spirit was free, and the dark force dwelling in the lake disappeared forever. When Misha returned home, he felt that the house no longer seemed so ominous. His grandmother hugged him and whispered, "You did it, Misha. You freed her. This summer vacation would forever remain in Misha's memory, reminding him that sometimes behind ordinary things lie the scariest secrets, and that courage and faith can overcome even the darkest evil.